What if a single act of kindness could change everything? What if the challenges meant to test your limits became the very moments that redefined your life? Amelia Clark is a self-made entrepreneur who has faced her share of battles. From humble beginnings in a struggling Boston neighborhood to boardrooms filled with doubt, she has fought to claim her place in a world that often underestimated her. But her biggest test comes on what seems like an ordinary business trip to Oslo. What starts as a confrontation over a first-class seat spirals into a journey of unexpected allies, deep self-reflection, and transformative decisions. Along the way, Amelia learns that resilience isn't just about standing firm, it's about letting others help you build bridges when the path ahead seems unclear. In this story of courage, connection, and second chances, we'll see how a single spark of kindness ripples outward, touching countless lives in ways no one could have predicted. Stay with us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and lessons that come from daring to believe in the power of collaboration and hope. The low hum of engines vibrated softly through the cabin as Amelia Clark adjusted her scarf and settled into seat 1A in the first-class section of the aircraft. It had been a long week, 16-hour days filled with meetings that tested her patience and pushed her to her limits. Now, as she looked out the small window at the fading hues of the evening sky, she allowed herself a moment of relief. This trip to Oslo was more than a business journey. It was a symbol of everything she had fought for, earned, and sacrificed to achieve. Amelia was not a woman who took success for granted. Her childhood in Crestwood, a struggling neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston, had been a series of uphill battles. Her father, a school janitor, and her mother, a nurse's aide, worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Amelia often stayed up late at the kitchen table, watching her mother scribble numbers into a notebook, balancing bills that never seemed to stop piling up. They taught her the value of perseverance and the power of education, values she carried like armor into adulthood. Today, she was the CEO of Clark Innovations, a rising tech firm specializing in sustainable technologies. But the road to the boardroom was paved with moments of doubt, rejection, and subtle discrimination. She had learned to navigate spaces where she was either underestimated or overlooked. The first-class seat she now occupied was not just a comfort, but a testament to years of resilience. Amelia leaned back, savoring the quiet luxury of the moment. Her leather briefcase, neatly tucked under her seat, carried all the documents she needed to finalize a major international deal. This partnership could elevate her company to new heights and provide opportunities she once only dreamed about. Yet, as she sipped her sparkling water, a familiar sense of unease bubbled beneath the surface. Success, she had learned, often came with its own set of challenges. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a sharp voice. "Excuse me," the woman said, her tone clipped and impatient. Amelia glanced up to see a tall, immaculately dressed woman with a designer handbag dangling from her elbow. Her name tag read, Vivian Hale. Vivian's gaze was piercing, and her expression carried an unmistakable air of entitlement. She gestured toward Amelia's seat. "I think there's been a mistake. This is my seat." Amelia held her ground, her voice calm but firm. "This is seat 1A. I booked it weeks ago." Vivian's smile was tight, her eyes cold. "I always sit in 1A. I am a premier elite member of this airline. I am sure you would be more comfortable somewhere farther back." Amelia's jaw tightened, though her expression remained composed. She had encountered people like Vivian before, people who assumed they were entitled to more simply because of their status. Before Amelia could respond, a flight attendant appeared, his practiced smile strained as he addressed the situation. "May I check your boarding pass, ma'am?" Amelia handed over her boarding pass without hesitation. Her heart remained steady, though she felt the weight of judgment from other passengers who had started to glance in their direction. The attendant examined the pass and nodded. "This is indeed Miss Clark's seat." Vivian's polished mask cracked, revealing a flash of frustration. "Are you sure? She might have upgraded at the last minute." Amelia's lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained steady. "I suggest you take the seat you were assigned." Vivian hesitated, then turned sharply, muttering under her breath as she stormed toward her assigned seat. Amelia felt the tension in her shoulders ease, but the experience left a bitter taste. She could feel the unspoken questions in the cabin. What was she doing in this seat? Did she belong here? Amelia focused on her briefcase, determined not to let the encounter shake her. Yet, deep down, she knew this wasn't an isolated incident. It was one of many moments where she had to prove her worth, not just through her work, but by holding her ground in spaces where she was often seen as an outsider. A quiet voice broke through her thoughts. "You handled that well." Amelia turned to see an older woman with kind eyes seated across the aisle. Her gray hair was pulled into a neat bun, and she wore a simple cardigan over a floral blouse. The woman extended a hand. "Grace Miller," she said warmly. "Amelia Clark," Amelia replied, shaking her hand. Grace's smile widened. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Some people forget that kindness costs nothing." Amelia was taken aback by the unexpected comment. Most people would have ignored the scene or quietly judged it from a distance. Grace's words, though simple, carried a warmth that caught Amelia off guard. "Thank you," Amelia said, her voice soft. Grace nodded. "It's important to remind people that everyone deserves respect, no matter their seat." The flight attendant returned with dinner service, and their conversation paused. Yet Amelia found herself glancing at Grace, curious about the woman who had spoken up when so many others had remained silent. It was a rare moment of connection, one that lingered as the flight continued. Later, as the cabin lights dimmed, Amelia opened her notebook and began reviewing her plans for the upcoming meeting in Oslo. But her focus wavered, her thoughts returning to Grace's words. Kindness costs nothing. It was a reminder Amelia hadn't realized she needed. She looked out the window at the dark expanse of sky, the soft glow of the plane's wingtip lights reflecting on the glass. Despite the challenges she faced, there were moments when unexpected kindness could shift the weight of the world, if only for a little while. For the first time in a long time, Amelia allowed herself to relax. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but tonight she found a small, unexpected source of hope in a stranger's kind gesture. And hope, Amelia thought, was a powerful thing. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway at Oslo Gardermoen Airport, the cabin filling with the quiet hum of passengers gathering their belongings. Amelia closed her notebook and slipped it into her leather briefcase. The cool efficiency of the Norwegian evening mirrored her mood. While the tension of the flight lingered, her mind was already turning to the business challenges that lay ahead. As she stepped into the airport terminal, Amelia felt a light tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Grace Miller, her kind-eyed fellow passenger from across the aisle, smiling warmly. "Miss Clark, I hope you do not mind," Grace began, her voice gentle, "but I wanted to speak to you before we part ways." "Not at all," Amelia replied, her curiosity piqued. Grace hesitated, clasping her hands together. "I felt I should say something earlier, during that whole ordeal. You shouldn't have had to endure that nonsense. It upset me to see you treated unfairly." Amelia blinked, caught off guard. "You have nothing to apologize for. You were kind to speak up afterward. Most people wouldn't have bothered." Grace shook her head. "Kindness is the least we can offer one another." That moment reminded me of my younger days, when I often felt I needed to prove I belonged in certain spaces. "I just wanted to say that I admire how you handled yourself." The words struck a chord deep within Amelia. For all her accomplishments, there were moments when the need to prove herself felt like a weight she could not set down. Yet here was Grace, a stranger who saw her strength without Amelia having to explain or justify it. Thank you, Amelia said, her voice steady but softened by emotion. That means more than you know. The terminal was bustling with travelers hurrying toward baggage claim and customs, but the moment between them felt still and significant. Grace, seeming to sense Amelia's gratitude, shifted the conversation with ease. "What brings you to Oslo, if you don't mind me asking?" she inquired, her tone light but genuinely curious. "A business trip," Amelia replied. "I am finalizing a partnership for my company. It is an important deal, one I have been working on for months." Grace's eyes twinkled with understanding. "That explains your calm demeanor earlier. You've likely faced bigger challenges than an entitled passenger on a flight." Amelia smiled faintly. "You could say that. And you, what brings you here?" Grace's expression softened. "I am volunteering at a community center in Bergen. My late husband was Norwegian, and I feel closer to him here. I try to give back in small ways where I can." Amelia was struck by Grace's quiet humility. "That's admirable," she said. "Most people wouldn't spend their time that way." Grace laughed lightly. "Oh, I am no saint. I just believe the world is only as cold as the kindness we withhold." The words lingered in Amelia's mind long after they said their goodbyes at customs. Grace's warmth had been a balm to the sharp edges of the flight's earlier confrontation. As Amelia stepped into her waiting car, the thought settled like a seed, planting itself quietly in her heart. The drive to her hotel offered Amelia a view of Oslo's serene beauty. The streets were lined with clean, minimalist buildings, their sharp lines softened by glowing streetlights and the occasional splash of greenery. She admired the orderliness of the city, but her thoughts kept returning to Grace. In her suite, Amelia unpacked quickly, her movements precise and efficient. She had just opened her laptop to review her presentation when an email notification caught her eye. The subject line read, "A small tip for Oslo." It was from Grace. Curiosity got the better of her, and she clicked on the message. Subject: "A small tip for Oslo." Dear Amelia, it was lovely meeting you earlier. I just wanted to share a small suggestion. If you find yourself needing a moment of calm, visit Vigeland Park. My husband and I used to walk there often. It has a way of grounding you, no matter what storms you face. Wishing you success on your deal. You'll do wonderfully. Warm regards, Grace. Amelia leaned back in her chair, a faint smile tugging at her lips. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the same warmth Grace had shown throughout their brief encounter. For a moment, Amelia considered dismissing the idea. Her schedule was packed, and every minute counted. But something about Grace's note stayed with her, nudging her to consider the unexpected. The next morning, Amelia's meeting with the Norwegian clients began smoothly. The sleek conference room was bathed in natural light, and her counterparts greeted her with polite enthusiasm. Yet as the meeting progressed, she sensed a subtle tension in the room. Their questions probed deeper than she expected, hinting at doubts about her approach. "While your proposal is ambitious," said Lars Johansson, the lead negotiator, "it does not align perfectly with our long-term values. In Norway, we prioritize collaborative growth over short-term gains." Amelia nodded, masking her disappointment. "I understand your concerns and appreciate the feedback. Perhaps we can adjust certain elements to better align with your vision." The meeting ended without a firm commitment. As the clients filed out, Amelia remained seated, her mind racing to assess what had gone wrong. She had anticipated challenges, but this felt personal, a rejection of not just her ideas, but her ability to connect with them on a deeper level. Back at her hotel, Amelia replayed the conversation in her mind, searching for missteps. Her confidence, usually unshakable, wavered as doubts crept in. Was she out of her depth? Had her American approach clashed too much with Scandinavian culture? The weight of the moment pressed heavily on her chest. She opened her laptop to revise her strategy, but found herself staring blankly at the screen. Her thoughts were clouded, her focus elusive. Grace's email flashed in her memory. "Visit Vigeland Park," it had said. Amelia hesitated, her instincts urging her to keep working, but something deeper told her she needed a break. Sliding her laptop shut, she grabbed her coat and stepped outside. The crisp Norwegian air greeted her like a reset button, each breath clearing away the fog in her mind. The park was breathtaking. Sculptures of human figures in various forms of connection and emotion lined the paths, each one a testament to the complexity of life. Amelia walked slowly, taking in the artistry and the serene surroundings. Families strolled hand in hand, children laughed as they chased one another, and an elderly couple sat quietly on a bench, their hands entwined. It was then that Amelia felt it, a sense of calm she had not realized she needed. The weight of the morning's meeting lifted slightly, replaced by a quiet determination. Grace had been right. This was what she needed to step back, reflect, and find clarity. As Amelia returned to her hotel that evening, her thoughts had shifted. She realized she had approached the deal with the mindset of a solitary achiever rather than a collaborator. If she wanted to succeed, she needed to rethink her strategy to listen more, understand their culture, and build trust. Grace's small act of kindness had set her on a new path, one that felt both challenging and hopeful. And for the first time since arriving in Oslo, Amelia felt ready to take it. The next morning, the soft light filtering through the curtains of Amelia's hotel room felt more like a quiet call to action than a comfort. She brewed a cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into her hands as she stared out at Oslo's skyline. The faintly chilled air beyond the glass seemed to mirror her own apprehensions. The previous day's meeting had been a sharp reminder that success wasn't just about persistence, it was also about perspective. Sitting at the small desk by the window, Amelia opened her notebook. Before diving into her presentation notes, her pen hesitated over the page, and her thoughts wandered back to her childhood. It was a place she rarely allowed herself to revisit, but the memory of Grace's words lingered. "The world is only as cold as the kindness we withhold." Growing up in Crestwood, life had been a mix of scarcity and resilience. The small apartment she shared with her parents and younger brother, Marcus, was always bustling with the sounds of hard work and quiet struggle. Her mother worked double shifts as a nurse's aide. Her father cleaned classrooms at night, and young Amelia often felt the weight of their sacrifices. Yet, it wasn't all hardship. There had been moments of unexpected kindness, acts that had stayed with her. She remembered Mrs. Hawthorne, their elderly neighbor, who lived in the apartment across the hall. Mrs. Hawthorne, with her warm smile and slightly crooked glasses, had a way of making everyone feel seen. When Amelia's parents couldn't afford new school supplies one year, it was Mrs. Hawthorne who knocked on their door with a bag of notebooks, pencils, and crayons. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, Amelia," Mrs. Hawthorne had said. "People like you change the world." That was the first time anyone had told Amelia she had the power to shape her destiny. The memory brought a faint smile to her face now, even as she reflected on how much those small gestures had mattered. Back then, her path seemed so uncertain, yet moments like those had planted seeds of hope. They reminded her that the journey wasn't always about monumental leaps, but about small steps, steps taken with the help of others who believed in her. Amelia set her pen down, her resolve strengthening. The same spirit of kindness and belief was what she needed to carry into her business dealings. The challenge now was figuring out how to translate that into action. Later that morning, Amelia met with Lars Johansson and his team for a second round of discussions. This time, she approached the meeting differently. She asked questions, truly listening to their answers instead of solely presenting her solutions. "I'd like to understand more about your vision," Amelia said, leaning forward slightly, her tone genuine. "How do you see this partnership benefiting your community and your long-term goals?" Lars seemed slightly taken aback by her shift in approach, but he nodded. We want sustainability not just in technology, but in relationships. Our priority is collaboration that uplifts everyone involved. As the meeting progressed, Amelia felt the ice thawing. She began to grasp how deeply connected her clients were to their community values. They weren't looking for quick wins. They sought partnerships rooted in shared purpose. By the end of the session, there was no definitive agreement, but Amelia could sense the energy had shifted. Lars's handshake was firmer, and his parting words carried a note of possibility. "We'll review your revised proposal," he said. "This has been a good start." Amelia left the meeting room with a cautious sense of optimism. She had taken a step in the right direction, but she knew there was more work to be done. That evening, as the city lights flickered against the backdrop of the Oslo fjord, Amelia found herself wandering the streets, her thoughts restless. She passed cozy cafes where locals sipped coffee and families lingered over dinner. The air carried a faint chill, but it was refreshing, grounding her as she walked. Her path eventually led her to Vigeland Park, the place Grace had suggested. Even in the fading light, the sculptures stood in stark relief against the darkening sky. Amelia found herself drawn to a particular statue, a depiction of two figures embracing, their faces pressed together in quiet understanding. The sculpture reminded her of her younger brother, Marcus. A flood of memories washed over her. Marcus helping her with math problems at the kitchen table, the way he'd cheer for her during her high school debates, and the look of pride on his face the day she graduated college. But not all memories were joyful. She also remembered how Marcus had struggled to find his own path after high school, burdened by the same scarcity that had driven Amelia to succeed. The weight of being the sibling who made it often pressed heavily on her shoulders. The last time they spoke, Marcus had said something that stayed with her. "Amelia, I'm proud of you. But don't forget to look back every once in a while. Sometimes the people behind you need a little extra light to find their way." She sighed, the cool air filling her lungs. Her success wasn't just hers. It was built on the sacrifices and kindness of others. Her parents, Mrs. Hawthorne, Marcus, and countless others who had believed in her along the way. Amelia glanced at her phone. On impulse, she composed a quick email to Grace. Subject: Thank you. Dear Grace, I visited Vigeland Park today, and I can see why you recommended it. It gave me a lot to reflect on. Thank you again for your kindness, and for sharing a piece of your life with me. Best. Amelia hitting send. Amelia felt a quiet sense of connection. She wasn't sure why, but reaching out to Grace felt like anchoring herself to something steady amidst the shifting currents of her trip. As she made her way back to her hotel, her steps felt lighter. She wasn't just here to close a deal, she was here to build something meaningful. And that, she realized, was worth every challenge she had faced. That night, Amelia sat at her desk and began revising her proposal once again. This time, she wove in the principles she had learned: collaboration, shared purpose, and mutual growth. For the first time in days, she felt not just hopeful, but certain. The challenges weren't over, but Amelia could see a path forward. And as she worked late into the night, she felt the steady pulse of gratitude guiding her every step. The next morning, Oslo greeted Amelia with a pale golden light that spilled over the fjords and the city's clean, orderly streets. Standing by the hotel window, she took in the quiet beauty of the scene, her thoughts already turning to the day ahead. She had sent her revised proposal to Lars and his team late the previous night, and now all she could do was wait. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she saw Grace Miller's name appear. Surprised, Amelia answered. "Grace, good morning," she said warmly. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "Good morning, Amelia," Grace replied, her voice carrying its usual warmth. "I hope you don't mind me calling. I just received your email and wanted to thank you for writing. I'm so glad you found the park helpful." "It was," Amelia said sincerely. "More than I expected." There was a brief pause before Grace continued. I was also wondering if I might offer a small suggestion. My late husband's cousin, Ingrid Jensen, lives here in Oslo. She runs a consulting firm and is well connected in business circles. She might be able to offer some insights. Amelia hesitated. She wasn't accustomed to asking for help. It felt like admitting she couldn't handle things on her own. But there was something about Grace's genuine kindness that disarmed her usual reservations. That's very thoughtful, Amelia said at last. I'd appreciate it. Grace laughed softly. I thought you might. I'll send you Ingrid's contact information. She's an incredibly sharp woman, and I think you'll get along. After they ended the call, Amelia found herself smiling. Grace's small, thoughtful gestures had begun to feel like a steady hand guiding her through unfamiliar waters. She couldn't shake the feeling that meeting Grace hadn't been a coincidence. It felt more like a quiet nudge from the universe. Later that afternoon, Amelia found herself sitting in a sleek office overlooking the Oslo fjord. The walls were lined with books and framed accolades, and the air carried a faint scent of polished wood and lavender. Across from her sat Ingrid Jensen, a tall, poised woman with striking features and an air of calm authority. She was dressed in a tailored navy blazer, her blonde hair neatly pinned back. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Clark, Ingrid said, her Norwegian accent light but distinctive. Grace spoke highly of you. Likewise, Amelia replied, meeting her gaze. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. Ingrid nodded, her sharp blue eyes appraising Amelia. Grace told me you're negotiating a deal with Lars Johansson's firm. They are a tough group, principled and deliberate, but fair once you've earned their trust. That's what I've gathered, Amelia said. I revised my proposal to align more closely with their values, but I still feel like I'm missing something. Ingrid leaned back in her chair, studying Amelia for a moment. Tell me about your company, she said. Not just the numbers or the technology, what is its purpose? Amelia paused, taken aback by the question. It wasn't often that people asked her about the heart of her work. Most focused solely on metrics or financial projections. My company, she began slowly, focuses on sustainable technology. But more than that, I want it to be a vehicle for change, something that creates opportunities and improves lives. Growing up, I didn't see a lot of people like me in tech. I want to change that. Ingrid's expression softened. And is that reflected in your proposal? Amelia frowned slightly. Not directly. I focused on the technical and financial aspects. Ingrid leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. Lars and his team care deeply about impact. They'll want to know not just what you're offering, but why it matters. If you can connect your work to their vision, you'll have a better chance of success. The advice struck a chord with Amelia. She had been so focused on proving herself that she hadn't thought about how to make her vision resonate with theirs. Thank you, Amelia said, her voice earnest. That's incredibly helpful. Ingrid smiled faintly. Grace was right about you. You're sharp and driven. But don't forget, business here isn't just about results. It's about relationships. Amelia nodded, a new sense of clarity settling over her. I'll keep that in mind. That evening, Amelia sat at her hotel desk, reworking her presentation once more. This time she infused it with stories, personal anecdotes about her journey, her company's mission, and the broader impact she hoped to achieve. She wove in elements of collaboration and community, aligning her vision with the values Ingrid had emphasized. As she worked, her mind drifted back to her childhood again. She thought of Mrs. Hawthorne and her parents, of Marcus's words urging her to look back and shine a light for others. These memories gave her the courage to let down her guard and write from a place of authenticity. By the time she finished, it was late, but Amelia felt a deep sense of satisfaction. For the first time in days, she wasn't just prepared, she was confident. The following morning, Amelia arrived at Lars's office with a quiet resolve. She stepped into the conference room, her briefcase in hand, and greeted the team with a warm smile. Lars raised an eyebrow as she handed out the revised materials, sensing a shift in her demeanor. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this updated proposal," Amelia began. Her voice was steady, but there was a new warmth in her tone. "I'd like to start by sharing why this partnership is important to me, not just as a business opportunity, but as a way to create meaningful change." Over the next hour, Amelia walked them through her vision, highlighting not only the technical aspects, but the human impact. She spoke about her commitment to sustainability, inclusivity, and collaboration, tying these values to the Norwegian firm's mission. As she finished, there was a moment of silence. Lars exchanged a glance with his colleagues, then turned back to Amelia with a thoughtful expression. "This is impressive," he said at last. "You've captured something we don't often see in proposals, Hart." Amelia exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her. "I'm glad it resonated. I believe this partnership can accomplish great things." Lars smiled faintly. "Let's discuss the next steps." As the meeting continued, Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just negotiating a deal, she was building something meaningful. That evening, Amelia emailed Grace again, thanking her for introducing her to Ingrid. Subject: Progress. "Dear Grace, I wanted to thank you again for connecting me with Ingrid. Her advice made all the difference. The meeting today went better than I could have hoped. I feel like I'm finally on the right track. I hope your time in Bergen is going well. Your kindness continues to inspire me. Warm regards." Amelia Grace's reply came quickly. Subject: Progress. "Dear Amelia, I'm so happy to hear that. Ingrid told me she was impressed by your determination. Keep going, you're making a bigger impact than you realize. Bergen has been lovely, but it's hearing from you that makes my day. Let me know how things unfold. Warmly, Grace." As Amelia read Grace's reply, she smiled. The pieces of her journey were beginning to fit together, guided not just by her own efforts, but by the quiet kindness of others. For the first time in a long while, she felt not just hopeful, but certain that she was on the verge of something extraordinary. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings and conversations, each inching Amelia closer to a potential agreement. Lars Johansson and his team had warmed significantly to her revised approach, and the progress felt promising. Yet, Amelia knew not to count her successes too soon. Negotiations in Oslo were deliberate, almost methodical, and while Lars had expressed genuine interest, his approval was only one part of the equation. As Amelia walked into the firm's downtown office for what she hoped would be the final meeting, the crisp Norwegian air seemed to invigorate her resolve. She clutched her briefcase tightly, rehearsing her key points in her mind. This meeting would decide everything. Lars greeted her in the lobby with his usual calm demeanor. "Welcome back, Ms. Clark," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you, Mr. Johansson," Amelia replied with a confident smile. The meeting began with the same efficiency she had come to expect. Amelia presented her refined proposal, taking care to emphasize collaboration and long-term impact. Lars and his colleagues listened attentively, nodding in approval at key points. By the end of her presentation, she felt a cautious optimism blooming. Then came the questions. "Your proposal is compelling," Lars began, leaning back in his chair, "but there are concerns about feasibility. Specifically, the resources your company can allocate to meet these demands." Amelia hesitated. She had anticipated this line of questioning, but Lars's tone suggested a deeper skepticism than she'd prepared for. "I understand your concern," she replied carefully. "Clark Innovations has consistently delivered on projects of this scale, and we're confident in our ability to meet these requirements." Lars exchanged a glance with his colleagues. The room grew heavier, the energy shifting. "I appreciate your confidence," Lars said, "but we must consider alternatives. Another firm has approached us with a similar proposal, one that guarantees a broader infrastructure. The words hit Amelia like a gust of cold wind. She hadn't expected competition to enter the conversation so late in the process. With all due respect, Amelia said, keeping her tone measured, Clark Innovations brings not only technical expertise, but a commitment to values that align with yours. Our track record speaks for itself. That it does, Lars acknowledged. But in business, decisions must balance vision with practicality. We need more time to review. The meeting ended shortly after, the sense of finality hanging unspoken in the air. Amelia shook hands with the team, her composure intact, but inside she felt the cracks forming. Back at her hotel, Amelia set her briefcase down and sank into the armchair by the window. The city lights glittered against the darkening sky, their beauty contrasting sharply with the storm brewing in her chest. She had put everything into this deal, months of preparation, countless revisions, and every ounce of resolve she could muster. To hear that another firm might take the opportunity felt like a slap. Amelia opened her laptop and stared at her email inbox, the words on the screen blurring as frustration clouded her thoughts. What more could she have done? She replayed the meeting in her mind, searching for missteps. Was her proposal not strong enough? Had she misread Lars's signals? A notification popped up at the corner of her screen, an email from Grace. Subject: Checking in. Dear Amelia, I was thinking about you today and wondering how things are going. I hope the negotiations are progressing smoothly. If they're not, remember, storms don't last forever. Warmly, Grace Amelia smiled faintly, despite the weight in her chest. Grace's timing was uncanny, as if she sensed when Amelia needed encouragement most. She typed a quick reply. Subject: Checking in. Dear Grace, thank you for your kind words. The truth is, today was tough. The deal I've been working on is at risk, and I'm not sure how to turn things around. But your email reminded me to keep perspective. Thank you for that. Best, Amelia, hitting send? Amelia leaned back in the chair, letting her mind drift. She thought of the challenges she had overcome in the past, the rejections, the uphill battles, and the moments when giving up had felt like the easier option. Yet each time, she had found a way forward, often with the help of someone who believed in her. That night, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, acknowledging the fear of failure that loomed over her, but alongside it came a flicker of determination. The next morning, Amelia awoke to another email from Grace. Subject: A thought. Dear Amelia, I know you're navigating a storm right now, but I wanted to share something my husband used to say. When the path ahead is unclear, look for allies who can lend their light. I hope you find the light you need. Warm regards, Grace. The words sparked something in Amelia. She thought of Ingrid and the insights she had shared. Perhaps the path forward wasn't one she had to navigate alone. She picked up the phone and dialed Ingrid's number. Ingrid, this is Amelia Clark, she said. I need your advice. Are you free for coffee today? An hour later, Amelia sat across from Ingrid at a small cafe overlooking the fjord. She explained the situation, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Ingrid listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. You're in a challenging position, she said, but challenges often reveal opportunities. What do you mean? Amelia asked. Ingrid smiled faintly. Lars's team is hesitant because they see risk. Show them that you understand their concerns and are willing to address them directly. Go beyond your proposal. Offer them something tangible that proves your commitment. Amelia nodded slowly, the pieces of a plan forming in her mind. And remember, Ingrid added, business here isn't just about competition. It's about relationships. Reach out to Lars personally. Let him see the person behind the proposal. The advice resonated deeply. Amelia realized she had been so focused on the deal itself that she had overlooked the power of connection. "Thank you, Ingrid," she said. "This helps more than you know." Back at her hotel, Amelia drafted an email to Lars, requesting a one-on-one meeting. She spent the rest of the day refining her approach, weaving in Ingrid's advice and her own insights. The path ahead was uncertain, but Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't ready to give up, not on the deal, and certainly not on herself. As she looked out at the fjord, the water shimmering under the pale afternoon light, she felt the weight of the previous day begin to lift. The storm wasn't over, but Amelia was ready to face it head-on, knowing she had the strength and the allies to see it through. The morning was quiet, with soft clouds settling over Oslo like a gentle embrace. Amelia sat at her desk, her laptop glowing faintly in the dim light of her hotel room. She reread the email she had drafted for Lars Johansson, her finger hovering over the send button. The message was concise, but heartfelt. Subject: a request for connection. Dear Lars, thank you again for the opportunity to present my proposal to your team. I understand your concerns and would like to address them personally. Collaboration is at the heart of what I do, and I would welcome the chance to discuss how we can align more closely with your vision. If your schedule allows, I'd appreciate the opportunity for a one-on-one meeting this week. Warm regards, Amelia Clark. With a deep breath, Amelia clicked send. The moment felt heavier than it should have, as though the simple act of reaching out symbolized far more than a meeting request. It felt like opening a chance to prove not only her company's worth, but also her own. The day stretched on in quiet anticipation. Amelia forced herself to stay busy, revising her materials and brainstorming solutions to the challenges Lars had raised. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't shake the restless energy coursing through her. By mid-afternoon, her phone buzzed with an email notification. She exhaled sharply when she saw Lars's name in her inbox. Subject: a request for connection. Dear Amelia, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your proactive approach and would be happy to meet. Let's schedule a coffee tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at Kaffe Brenneriet on Karl Johans Gate. Looking forward to our discussion. Best regards. Lars' relief and determination washed over her in equal measure. She had her chance, and now it was up to her to make it count. The next morning, Amelia arrived early at the bustling cafe. The air was filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the warm interior provided a welcome contrast to the chilly streets outside. She chose a small table near the window, where the soft glow of sunlight spilled through the glass. Lars arrived a few minutes later, his demeanor as composed as ever. He greeted Amelia with a firm handshake and a faint smile. "Good morning, Ms. Clark," he said. "Good morning," Amelia replied. Once they were seated with their drinks, Amelia wasted no time. "Thank you for meeting with me," she began. "I wanted to take this opportunity to address your team's concerns directly and explore ways we can work together more effectively." Lars nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I appreciate that. Please, go on." Amelia leaned forward slightly, her tone measured but sincere. "I understand that your hesitation isn't about the quality of our technology, but about the resources and infrastructure needed to support such a partnership. I'd like to propose a phased implementation plan that allows us to scale gradually, while ensuring we meet your standards every step of the way." Lars's brow furrowed, but not with disapproval, rather, with interest. "That's an interesting approach," he said. "It mitigates the risks we've identified." Amelia took the opening and continued, weaving in specific examples of her company's adaptability and success in similar scenarios. She spoke not only of numbers and logistics, but also of her personal commitment to the project and her belief in its potential to create lasting impact. By the time she finished, Lars was nodding slowly. "You've given me a lot to think about," he said, his tone softer than it had been in previous meetings. "What you've proposed addresses many of our concerns, I can see that you're not just offering a service, you're offering a partnership. That's exactly what I hope to build, Amelia said, her voice steady. Lars smiled faintly. This is the first time I've seen you step outside the typical business pitch. It's refreshing. The conversation shifted to a more personal tone as Lars asked about Amelia's journey and her company's origins. She found herself opening up, sharing stories of her upbringing and the challenges she had faced. What drives you? Lars asked, his curiosity genuine. Amelia hesitated for a moment before answering. I've always believed that success isn't just about what you achieve, but about how you use it to lift others. My company is a way to create opportunities for people who might not have them otherwise. Lars regarded her quietly for a moment before nodding. That's a vision I can respect. When the meeting ended, Amelia felt a cautious sense of triumph. Lars had made no commitments, but his openness and engagement hinted at possibilities. That evening, Amelia received a call from Ingrid. How did the meeting go? Ingrid asked. Well, I think, Amelia replied. Lars was receptive, and I feel like I finally connected with him on a deeper level. That's good to hear, Ingrid said. It's not just about the deal, you know it's about building trust, and it sounds like you've made progress there. Amelia smiled. Thank you, Ingrid. Your advice has been invaluable. It's nothing you couldn't have figured out on your own, Ingrid said with a chuckle. But I'm glad I could help. Keep me updated. As Amelia sat in her hotel room that night, she reflected on how far she had come since arriving in Oslo. The challenges had been greater than she expected, but so too had the lessons. She thought of Grace's kindness, Ingrid's guidance, and Lars's unexpected willingness to listen. Each moment of connection had felt like a hand reaching out, pulling her forward when the path seemed uncertain. For someone who had always prided herself on independence, it was a humbling realization that sometimes the greatest strength came from leaning on others. Amelia glanced at her notebook, where she had written a single line earlier that day. Collaboration isn't a weakness, it's a bridge. The deal wasn't done yet, but for the first time in days, Amelia felt hopeful. Not just about the outcome, but about the journey itself. With that thought, she closed her notebook and prepared for the next step, ready to face whatever came next with the strength of her allies and her own quiet resolve. The gray morning sky stretched over Oslo, draped with low clouds that seemed to hang just above the rooftops. Amelia watched the city unfold below her as she sipped her tea in the hotel suite. The glow of her laptop screen reflected on her glasses as she reviewed her notes for the upcoming meeting. This wasn't just another pitch. This was an opportunity to solidify the trust she had begun to build with Lars and his team. She glanced at the clock. There was still time before her meeting, but the anticipation in her chest made her restless. Her phone buzzed with a new email. It was from Grace. Subject: a gentle reminder. Dear Amelia, I've been thinking of you and wanted to share something my husband always said when facing a challenge. A bridge isn't built with a single beam. It takes many pieces working together to span the distance. You've got this. Warmly, Grace Amelia smiled as she read the words. Grace had a way of sending the right message at just the right time. Folding her laptop shut, she decided to take a short walk to clear her head before the meeting. The brisk air outside invigorated her as she strolled along the cobblestone streets. The city seemed quieter today, the usual hustle of commuters softened by the overcast sky. Amelia found herself at the edge of a small park, its paths winding through bare trees and patches of green. She stood there for a moment, inhaling the cool air, and let Grace's words settle in her mind. When the time came, Amelia entered the conference room with a renewed sense of purpose. Lars and his team were already seated, their expressions neutral but attentive. She greeted them warmly, her confidence tempered by the humility she had come to embrace. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to meet again, she began, her voice steady. I've taken your feedback to heart, and today, I'd like to go beyond my initial proposal to show you how our partnership can create something larger than either of us could achieve alone. Amelia walked them through her phased implementation plan, breaking it down into clear, actionable steps. She had integrated their concerns into every aspect of the strategy, demonstrating not only her adaptability, but her willingness to collaborate. But it was the personal touch that truly set her presentation apart. "I'd also like to share a story," Amelia said, pausing briefly to meet their eyes. "This company wasn't built in isolation. It was shaped by the lessons and kindness of people who believed in me when the odds seemed insurmountable. I've carried that belief into the way I run my business. Our work isn't just about technology, it's about creating opportunities, lifting others, and leaving a legacy of impact." The room was silent as her words hung in the air. Lars leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "That's a compelling perspective, Ms. Clark," he said. "It's rare to see a proposal framed with such clarity and heart." Another team member chimed in. "I can see how this aligns with our values. It's not just a project, it's a partnership." Amelia felt a spark of hope flicker in her chest. For the first time since the negotiations began, she sensed a genuine connection forming. After the meeting, Lars approached her privately as the rest of the team began to disperse. "Ms. Clark," he said, his tone quieter now, "I want to commend you. This has been a challenging process, but your approach has been refreshing. You've shown not only persistence, but a willingness to listen and adapt. That means something to us." "Thank you, Mr. Johansson," Amelia replied. "It means a great deal to hear that." He nodded. "We'll be reviewing everything carefully, but I believe we're on the path to something productive. I'll be in touch soon." As he walked away, Amelia allowed herself a small sigh of relief. It wasn't a definitive yes, but it was progress. And progress, she had learned, was often just as valuable as the destination. That evening, Amelia received a call from Ingrid. "I heard from Lars," Ingrid said without preamble. "He's impressed, Amelia. You've managed to shift his perspective, which is no small feat." "That's good to hear," Amelia said, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. "But it's not a done deal yet." "No, it's not," Ingrid agreed. "But you've laid the foundation. Now it's just a matter of timing and follow-through." Amelia smiled. "Thank you, Ingrid. Your guidance has been invaluable." "Any time," Ingrid replied. "You're doing great work, Amelia. Keep going." Later that night, as Amelia sat by the window of her hotel room, watching the lights of Oslo shimmer against the dark water of the fjord, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of Grace's unexpected kindness on the flight, Ingrid's sage advice, and even Lars's measured skepticism, which had pushed her to refine her approach. Each connection had been a piece of the bridge she was building, spanning the distance between doubt and possibility. Amelia opened her notebook and wrote a single sentence: "Great bridges aren't built alone." She closed the notebook with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Whatever the outcome of the deal, she knew she was building something meaningful, not just for her company, but for herself and the people she hoped to inspire. As she drifted off to sleep, her mind settled on a single, hopeful thought. Sometimes, it's the act of building itself that matters most. Amelia woke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through her hotel curtains. The sky outside was painted in muted hues of gray and gold, a serene backdrop for the day she had been both anticipating and dreading. Lars Johansson's team had promised a decision regarding her proposal, and the weight of their answer hung in the air like an unspoken challenge. She spent the morning preparing for every possible outcome. Her notebook sat open on the desk, filled with contingency plans and strategies. Yet, no amount of preparation could quell the knot of uncertainty tightening in her chest. She reminded herself of the mantra she had written the night before: "Great bridges aren't built alone." By mid-morning, An email from Lars arrived. Amelia's heart raced as she clicked it open. Subject: Follow-up discussion. Dear Ms. Clark, thank you for your thoughtful and engaging presentation. After careful review, our team would like to discuss final adjustments to the proposal before making our decision. Can you meet us at 3:00 p.m. in our offices? Best regards. Lars Johansson. Amelia exhaled slowly. It wasn't a definitive yes, but it was another chance. And another chance meant hope. The hours leading up to the meeting felt like an eternity, but when Amelia stepped into the conference room that afternoon, she exuded calm confidence. Lars and his team greeted her warmly, their expressions neutral, but not unfriendly. We've gone through your proposal in detail, Lars began, as everyone took their seats. It's clear that you've put a great deal of thought into addressing our concerns. Amelia nodded, keeping her focus sharp. Thank you. I'm glad my adjustments resonated with your team. Lars continued. There are still a few logistical elements we'd like to refine. Specifically, we'd like to discuss how to ensure long-term sustainability for both parties. Amelia leaned forward, her pen poised over her notebook. I'd be happy to walk through those details. What followed was an intense but collaborative discussion. Amelia addressed their questions with precision, blending technical expertise with genuine passion for the project. When the conversation shifted toward broader goals, she highlighted shared values and the potential for their partnership to create meaningful impact. By the time the meeting concluded, Lars stood and extended his hand. Ms. Clark, I believe we've reached a point where we can move forward. Pending final approval from our board, I'd like to officially recommend your proposal. For a moment, Amelia was stunned. Then the weight of his words sank in, and a wave of relief washed over her. Thank you, Mr. Johansson, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion building in her chest. I look forward to working with you. As Amelia walked out of the office building into the crisp evening air, she allowed herself a rare moment of pride. She had done it. The months of hard work, the late nights, and the moments of doubt had culminated in a victory she had fought to earn. Back at her hotel, Amelia's phone buzzed with a call from Grace. She smiled as she answered. Grace, she said warmly, your timing is perfect. Grace's voice was as calm and kind as always. I had a feeling today was significant. How did it go? Amelia leaned against the desk, her smile widening. They're moving forward with my proposal. It's not final yet, but it's as close to a yes as I could have hoped for. That's wonderful news, Amelia, Grace said, her genuine delight evident. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, Amelia admitted. Your advice, your encouragement, it's been a guiding light. Grace laughed softly. Oh, Amelia, you give me too much credit. You've always had the strength to succeed. I only helped you see it. Their conversation lingered on lighter topics for a while, but when they hung up, Amelia felt a renewed sense of connection, not just to Grace, but to the journey that had brought her here. The next day, Ingrid invited Amelia to lunch to celebrate her success. The cafe overlooked the fjord, its glass walls offering a stunning view of the water sparkling under the pale winter sun. Ingrid raised her glass of sparkling water. To resilience and partnership, she said. Amelia clinked her glass against Ingrid's. And to unexpected allies. As they ate, Ingrid shared stories of her own career of deals that had fallen apart only to lead to better opportunities, and of the mentors who had shaped her path. Amelia listened intently, her own experiences echoing in Ingrid's words. You know, Ingrid said, her tone turning thoughtful, the best partnerships aren't just about shared goals. They're about shared trust. And you've built that here, Amelia. Amelia smiled. It's a lesson I'll carry with me. That evening, as Amelia packed her belongings for her flight home, she reflected on the many bridges she had crossed in her time in Oslo. Each connection, Grace, Ingrid, Lars, had added a piece to the foundation she was building, not just for her business, but for herself. The deal wasn't just a professional milestone. It was proof that resilience, humility, and collaboration could turn even the toughest challenges into stepping stones. Amelia wrote one final note in her notebook before closing it. Turning points don't happen in isolation. They happen when we let others help us find the way. She closed her suitcase and stepped out of the hotel, ready to return home not just with a deal, but with a deeper understanding of what it meant to truly build bridges. The hum of the airplane engines was a comforting constant as Amelia leaned back in her first-class seat, staring out at the vast expanse of clouds beneath her. The flight home offered a rare moment of stillness, allowing her thoughts to settle. The deal with Lars Johansson's firm wasn't just a win for her company, it was a transformative moment for her personally. Her notebook rested on her lap, open to the line she had written the night before. Turning points don't happen in isolation. The truth of those words resonated deeply. From Grace's unexpected kindness to Ingrid's guidance and Lars's trust, every connection had carried her forward. Now, she felt an unshakable urge to give back to create a ripple effect that extended far beyond herself. Amelia flipped to a fresh page in her notebook and began jotting down ideas. She envisioned a foundation dedicated to supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs in the tech industry, providing mentorship, resources, and opportunities for growth. It would be her way of honoring the people who had believed in her when she needed it most. By the time the plane landed, Amelia had outlined the core principles of what she would call the Bridge Forward Foundation. The name symbolized everything she had learned in Oslo, that true success was about collaboration and lifting others as you climbed. Back at her Boston office, Amelia wasted no time putting her plan into motion. She called her assistant, Sophia, into her office and explained her vision. "I want to start a foundation," Amelia said, her tone decisive. "Something that helps people like us, people who don't always have access to the resources or networks they need to succeed." Sophia's eyes lit up. "That's an incredible idea. How can I help?" "Start by compiling a list of potential partners," Amelia said. "I want this to be a collaborative effort. And schedule a call with Grace Miller. She's been an inspiration to me throughout this journey, and I'd love for her to be involved." Sophia nodded, scribbling notes into her planner. "Consider it done." When Amelia called Grace later that week, the older woman's voice was warm and curious. "Amelia, it's lovely to hear from you," Grace said. "How have you been?" "Busy," Amelia admitted, smiling, "but in the best way. I've been thinking about how much your kindness has meant to me and how many others could benefit from the kind of support you've given me." Grace chuckled softly. "You've been doing quite well on your own, Amelia." "I have, but I haven't done it alone," Amelia replied. "That's why I'm starting a foundation to mentor and support entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. And I was hoping you'd consider being an advisor. Your wisdom and perspective would mean so much." Grace was silent for a moment, clearly touched. "Amelia, I'd be honored. What you're doing, it's remarkable." "It's just the beginning," Amelia said, "but I want it to make a difference." Over the next few months, the Bridge Forward Foundation began to take shape. Amelia enlisted the help of colleagues, friends, and mentors, building a team as passionate about the mission as she was. They organized workshops, created networking opportunities, and launched a mentorship program that paired young entrepreneurs with seasoned professionals. The foundation's first major event was a tech incubator launch, held in Boston's historic Seaport District. The room buzzed with energy as attendees mingled, shared ideas, and celebrated the start of something new. Amelia stood at the edge of the room, watching the scene unfold. She spotted Grace in a corner, speaking with a group of young women who hung on her every word. Ingrid had flown in from Oslo and was deep in conversation with a startup founder about sustainable business models. Lars had even sent a congratulatory message, expressing his pride in how their partnership had sparked broader change. "Amelia," a voice said, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see a young woman with wide eyes and a nervous smile. "Yes," Amelia said, her tone encouraging. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said, clutching a notebook to her chest. "This program has already given me more guidance than I thought possible. You've inspired me to keep going." Amelia felt a lump rise in her throat. "Thank you for saying that. You're exactly why I started this foundation. Keep pushing forward, you're going to do great things." The young woman nodded, her smile growing, and moved back into the crowd. That evening, after the event had ended and the room had emptied, Amelia found herself sitting alone by the stage, reflecting on how far she had come. She pulled out her notebook and flipped through its pages, each one a record of the journey that had led her here. The lessons, the challenges, the people who had believed in her, they were all part of the story. Her phone buzzed with a message from Grace. "You've built something extraordinary. I'm so proud of you." Amelia smiled and replied, "I couldn't have done it without you." As she closed her notebook, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The foundation wasn't just about giving back, it was about creating a legacy of resilience, kindness, and hope. It was a bridge she would continue building, piece by piece, for years to come. For the first time in a long while, Amelia felt that she wasn't just achieving success, she was creating something that truly mattered, and that was a feeling beyond compare. The hum of voices filled the auditorium as Amelia stood backstage, peeking out at the growing crowd. It was the one-year anniversary of the Bridge Forward Foundation, and the celebration had drawn supporters, partners, and beneficiaries from across the country. A large banner hung above the stage, "Building Bridges, Creating Futures." Amelia adjusted her blazer, her fingers brushing against the smooth fabric as she steadied herself. Public speaking wasn't new to her, but today carried a deeper significance. This wasn't just about her success, it was about the people whose lives had been touched by the foundation and the countless stories that had emerged over the past year. "Ready?" Sophia asked, stepping beside her with a clipboard. Amelia nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." As she walked onto the stage, the applause was warm and enthusiastic. The room was filled with faces she recognized. Grace sat in the front row, her kind eyes sparkling with pride. Ingrid had flown in again from Oslo, and even Lars had traveled to be part of the event. The sight of them filled Amelia with gratitude, reminding her of the journey that had brought her here. She stepped up to the podium, adjusting the microphone. The applause died down, and a quiet anticipation settled over the room. "Thank you all for being here today," Amelia began, her voice steady. "When I started this foundation, I never imagined how much it would grow in just 1 year. The Bridge Forward Foundation began as a simple idea: to create opportunities for those who, like me, faced barriers that felt insurmountable." She paused, scanning the room. "But this foundation isn't just about me, it's about all of you. The mentors who have given their time, the partners who have shared their resources, and the incredible entrepreneurs who have shown us what resilience truly looks like." A ripple of applause swept through the crowd. "I'd like to share one story that embodies what this foundation stands for," Amelia continued. "A year ago, a young woman named Maya joined our mentorship program. Maya had a brilliant idea for a sustainable packaging startup, but lacked the resources and guidance to bring it to life." Amelia gestured toward the corner of the stage, where Maya now stood, beaming. Today, Maya's company is thriving. She's created jobs in her community, reduced waste, and inspired countless others to pursue their dreams. Maya, you are a shining example of what happens when we build bridges instead of walls. The audience erupted into applause as Maya joined Amelia on stage, her smile radiant. "Thank you," Maya said into the microphone, her voice shaking slightly. "The Bridge Forward Foundation changed my life, And because of that, I can now help others change theirs. I'm forever grateful to Amelia and everyone here who believed in me." As Maya stepped back, Amelia felt a lump rise in her throat. She turned back to the audience. "Maya's story is just one of many," she said, "and it's proof that when we invest in people, the impact ripples outward. It's not just about the individual, it's about communities, industries, and the world we want to create." After the event, the room buzzed with energy as attendees mingled and shared their own experiences. Amelia moved through the crowd, exchanging handshakes and hugs, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "Amelia!" a familiar voice called. She turned to see Grace approaching, her expression warm. "Grace," Amelia said, pulling her into an embrace, "I'm so glad you're here." "You wouldn't have been able to keep me away," Grace replied, laughing softly. "What you've built, it's extraordinary. I hope you realize that." "I do," Amelia said, her voice steady. "And I hope you know how much of it is because of you. Your kindness set everything in motion." Grace waved her hand dismissively. "I only nudged you. The rest was all you." Amelia smiled, but her eyes held a hint of emotion. "You did more than nudge. You reminded me of the power of connection, of kindness, of hope, and I'll carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life." As the evening wound down, Amelia found a quiet moment to reflect. She stood near the large windows of the auditorium, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. Ingrid joined her, a glass of sparkling water in hand. "You've come a long way," Ingrid said. "So have we," Amelia replied, smiling. "None of this would have been possible without people like you." Ingrid raised her glass. "To building bridges," Amelia clinked her glass against Ingrid's, "and to the people who cross them." Later that night, Amelia sat at her desk in her quiet apartment, the day's events still fresh in her mind. She opened her notebook, the same one she had carried with her to Oslo, and wrote a final reflection. "Kindness is the spark that ignites change." When we extend a hand, we don't just lift someone else, we create a ripple that touches countless lives. And that is how we change the world. Closing the notebook, Amelia felt a deep sense of peace. The journey she had started in Oslo had grown into something far greater than she had imagined. The bridges she had built were no longer just for her, they were for everyone who dared to dream, to persevere, and to hope. And in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. As the room emptied and the lights dimmed, Amelia sat for a moment longer, her heart full of gratitude and purpose. The journey that began with a single act of kindness had grown into a movement, one built on resilience, collaboration, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserves a chance to succeed. Amelia's story is a reminder that no matter where you start, it's the connections you build and the kindness you extend that shape your journey. We all have the power to build bridges for others, creating ripples of change that extend far beyond what we can see. If this story inspired you, join us in spreading its message. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage, perseverance, and hope. Together, we can celebrate the power of kindness and the strength it takes to create a better future. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little encouragement today, and comment below to let us know your thoughts. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we'll see you in the next story.